All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're diving deep into the world of vampires. But
Vampires.
we're not talking about the sparkly kind, no way.
Yep.
We're going way back, digging into those legendary bloodsuckers
The OGs.
and figuring out how they show us how human fears and desires have changed over time.
Yeah, it's like looking in a mirror,
Exactly.
A spooky, blood-sucking mirror.
Oh, right. So, to guide us on this deep dive, we have two really interesting sources.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be good.
One tracks how vampire stories evolved from, like, scary Gothic horror to modern romance.
I love a good love story.
Me too. Especially when it involves fangs.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And the other source, it looks at how different cultures around the world see vampires.
Because they're everywhere.
They are. So get ready to unpack centuries of vampire lore.
Let's get into it.
Let's start with maybe the most famous vampire of all time,
Dracula.
Dracula. He and those other Gothic vampires like Carmilla,
Oh, she's a classic.
they weren't just meant to scare you. They were like symbols, loaded with all those Victorian anxieties.
Mm.
They preyed on people.
Uh-huh.
They came from faraway lands.
Some mysterious other.
And they just like oozed those mysteries of the night.
Totally.
What do you think? Why do you think these figures terrified Victorian readers?
Well, you have to remember the Victorian era was a time of massive change in society, right?
Yeah, lots of new stuff happening.
They had all these scientific advancements and gender roles were changing, and they were really scared of diseases like syphilis.
Oh, right, like a fear of the unknown.
Exactly.
Huh?
And vampires, well, with all that talk about blood and bodily fluids.
And an insatiable hunger.
Right. They just became the perfect symbol for all those fears.
They were the ultimate other,
Exactly. Foreign and seductive.
threatening to destroy everything the Victorians had built.
It makes you think about how we see the other today.
Yeah, that's a whole other deep...
We could do a whole series on that.
For sure. So Dracula, he's from Transylvania, right? And for Victorians, that place was like exotic,
Oh, yeah, super exotic and dangerous.
dangerous. And his like aristocratic status and how he just like preyed on people,
Oh, yeah, he was all powerful.
that tapped into anxieties about class
Definitely.
and the whole like possibility of society being turned upside down.
Social upheaval, for sure.
And we can't forget, of course, the biting.
The hallmark of a vampire.
Victorians were terrified of diseases spread through bodily fluids, so the bite,
This is like the ultimate transgression.
it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we move into like the 20th and 21st centuries, something changed.
Did it.
Vampires got a makeover. They became
Less scary.
way less scary,
More alluring.
alluring, brooding, even.
Not Edward Cullen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those Vampire Diaries, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think we became so drawn to this idea of, like, falling for a vampire?
It's a shift in our fears, isn't it? We're not so worried about the unknown or the foreign anymore.
You've kind of embraced that stuff, you know?
Yeah, now we're more concerned with things like personal freedom.
And our identities.
Yeah, and relationships.
So the vampire, who's, like, dangerous but also attractive, becomes this symbol.
A metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah.
A metaphor for these struggles.
It's like we went from fearing the monster in the shadows to wanting to understand them.
And even, like, fall in love with them.
Exactly. Modern vampire stories, they focus on forbidden love.
And self-acceptance.
Right. And struggling to figure out who you are.
In a world that maybe wants you to be someone else.
And they give us a safe space to, like, play with those emotions.
Without actually having to worry about, you know...
Eternal damnation.
Exactly.
And all that garlic.
Right. Okay. So we talked about how Western vampire stories changed.
Their trip.
But get this, vampires aren't just a Western thing.
No way.
Cultures all over the world have their own versions.
It's a worldwide phenomenon.
Our second source, it goes deep into these global variations. And let me tell you,
It's wild.
it is. There's the Jiangshi in China,
What's that?
a hopping corpse that, you know, preys on the living. Right. Then there's the Aswang in the Philippines.
Okay.
It can shapeshift.
Whoa.
It can turn into a bat
Classic.
or a beautiful woman.
Ooh, dangerous.
Very dangerous.
I like it.
And, of course, we can't forget the Nosferatu
Oh, yeah.
from Slavic folklore.
The OG creepy vampire
He's got those rat-like features.
and hates the sun.
Seriously hates the
I know
sun.
the good ones do.
But here's what's so cool. Each of these vampires reflects their culture's beliefs.
Ah, I see.
Like the Jiangshi, the reason it hops
What's that?
is because the Chinese believed that when a soul left the body, the limbs would stiffen.
Makes sense.
And to bring the body back, they would call the soul back in.
So it's like a jerky motion.
Yeah, it's a connection between their burial practices
Wow, that's so cool.
and vampire lore.
It all ties together.
It does. Then you have the Aswang, the shapeshifter.
Right.
It connects to their folklore about demonic figures
Oh, yeah.
and anxieties about dangers hiding in nature.
Lurking in the shadow.
And the Nosferatu, with his, not so handsome looks.
He's definitely not winning any beauty contests,
He really highlights that fear of disease and decay.
which was a huge concern in Europe back then.
It's like each culture took the basic idea of a vampire
And adapted it.
and made it their own.
A reflection of their world.
Exactly. So we've talked about how vampires are different all over the world.
Literally get around.
But what is it about them that keeps us fascinated?
Good question.
Why are they so enduringly fascinating?
I think it's their moral ambiguity.
Like, they're not all good or all bad.
Right, they're both predator and prey.
Monstrous, but also, alluring.
I represent the forbidden.
The taboo.
Exactly.
They give us a safe way to explore these dark questions
The what if.
about our own nature,
Like, what if we gave in to our darkest impulses?
It's like they allow us to think about our shadow selves
To confront our deepest desires and fears.
without actually, becoming a bloodsucker.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah, probably.
But they let us explore those ideas.
And that's powerful. But vampires, they haven't stayed the same, right?
Of course not.
Modern storytellers are always finding new ways to reimagine them.
Kept it fresh.
Exactly. They bring in current issues and fears.
Modernizing the myth.
Yeah, like Let the Right One In,
Oh, that's a good one.
or The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires.
Oh, yeah, I loved that one.
They go way beyond the whole, blood and fangs thing.
You get deeper.
They explore things like adolescence
And female empowerment.
and how messed up society can be.
Yeah, hypocrisy.
What other themes do you see popping up in these modern vampire stories?
It's really interesting how they use vampires to talk about social issues.
Like a metaphor.
Exactly. Like Let the Right One In. It's about how awkward and vulnerable it feels to be a teenager.
And feeling like an outsider.
Right, and the vampire's like the ultimate outsider.
Yeah, they don't fit in.
And then you have the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is all about female rage.
Ooh, powerful.
And how women fight for power in a world that's run by men.
And the vampires represent.
The men trying to control and silence women.
Wow.
Heavy stuff.
It is. So vampires aren't just scary stories anymore.
No, they've evolved.
They've become a way for us to explore relationships.
The good, the bad, the bloody.
All the messy stuff.
Our struggles as humans.
Our inner demons.
Exactly.
Which brings us to our final question.
Get me with it.
If vampires are a reflection of our fears and desires, what do you think the future of vampire stories tells us about where we're headed as humans?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What new anxieties will they represent?
What new fears will they embody?
What hidden truths will they reveal?
Something to think about.
It is. In the meantime, go check out some of the vampire stories we mentioned.
Or find a cultural variation that sounds cool.
There's a whole world of blood-sucking lore out there.
Get out there and explore.
Happy hunting.
And watch your neck.
Haha.